Hi folks, it's Swank Ivy with another Letters to an Asexual. This is number 122. I'm trying to stay cozy. I may live in Florida, but it's a little bit chilly for me, and I'm a wimp. So this is why you're getting me in my little pink Oodie. It's huge. But that's part of what makes it cozy. Before I get into my letter for today, I thought I'd catch you up a little bit on how my 2025 is going, and I'd love to hear from some of you regulars about how 2025 is treating you, outside of some of the horrific things that are going on in this political climate, which I will not talk about directly. Personally, I am working on increasing the amount of time I'm spending on my writing, so I'm hoping that my next novel will be done soon, and I'm fingers crossed about that. And then I'll dive into editing it and eventually trying to get it out there. So I'm doing that. I have finished a couple of short stories last month, and they'll be shopping around pretty soon. One of them is extremely long, but that's not unusual for me. I think I have decided to combat the fact that I am shorter than usual with everything I write being longer than usual. Oh, and I got my first manicure. I don't know if you can see that. Let me show you my pretty nails. I've never had a manicure before because I never had long nails before, but I broke a little piece off of one of my teeth somewhat recently and realized after I had to get that fixed that that may have been a point that I was using to bite my nails, so I ended up just deciding to stop doing that, and I've got long nails now, and so I had them painted for my birthday. You like that color? It's very shiny, so that was a new experience for me. It's fun. I don't know that I would do it regularly, but it's worth doing. So besides writing, I've been working on playing my ukulele more, trying to get some more songs learned. That's a lot of fun. And I decided to take on something that I always used to foresee myself maybe doing someday as a career when I was a kid, but never looked into as an adult because I was told that you had to live in LA to do this. But I've always been interested in voice acting, and when I was a huge fan of Animaniacs in the 90s, and I thought, I could do that. I could be a cartoon voice. I think it would be fun. I just barely looked into what it would take to do that. And back in those days, everybody was saying, well, you have to live in LA so you can go to the auditions and you have to be able to get there quickly. So I just figured, well, I'm not going to live in LA, so I guess I can't do that as a career choice. But, things have changed and evolved an awful lot these days. So there are lots of people who do voice acting from home studios, and also there are other options besides flying to LA every time you want to do a recording. But that's neither here nor there because I'm not in that situation. But I decided to start looking into what it would take to maybe get started, and some of the advice that I've seen is just try to do some projects, get some experience, even if it's unpaid or a student film or something like that, and just look around to see what's out there. And it turned out the first thing that I auditioned for, I actually got cast. So that's pretty cool. There's going to be, it's like a comedy slash thriller detective story type thing where I play one of the main characters, and that'll be out sometime soon. So if people are interested in hearing that, I will drop the information at some point when it becomes available. But yeah, it was a fun experience. So I'm now looking for other opportunities and just trying to see, what's out there for me. So I don't just automatically win everything that I try, of course. So I've also been passed over for a couple of roles so far as well. I don't want to give the impression that I just try things and immediately I'm lucky. It's just that it just so happened that the first one that I looked into, they wanted me. So that was pretty cool and a nice boost to the ego, I guess. It made me think I could be good at it. So And I did enjoy recording the parts. So let's see, other than that, what else is going on with me? I've been going to practice with my band and working on some other projects. I have some personal projects, trying to get some photos organized. Some of y'all might remember that my mom died in 2023, and I was still kind of trying to go through all the photo albums and get some of them scanned and stuff. So I've been working on that stuff. Hasn't been a whole lot going on in the world of ace activism for me. I still say things on social media here and there, and I still make these videos once a month. It's very important to me to keep making things and keep sharing messages that I think are important, but I really haven't been ultra involved in anything super significant. So, I found out today actually that one of my short stories is going to be reprinted. It was published for the first time in the year 2020, but they're going to re-release it in, I guess, an anthology of stories that are about ethics in sexuality, which I think is really interesting that one of my stories is going to be in there. It has nothing to do with asexuality, actually, but it was a short story I sold in, now it's looking at like 5 years ago, which is called Everyone's Gay in Space. It'll be re-released in an anthology from After Dinner Conversation is the name of the magazine, so you can look that up if you're interested. So, let's get into letter number 122, which is about sex will change you. I'm sure that if you were an out asexual person, you've probably had someone tell you that sex would make you want sex. And of course, this is a veiled suggestion that we all need to have sex and we all need to try it, or else we can't possibly know what we like. And it is a suggestion that we make ourselves do things that we don't want to do, and or that we should be convinced and coerced for our own good. And the example I'm going to share with you happened on Twitter when it was still Twitter, and I am pretty sure that some of the things that this person said were intentionally trollish, but we're going to share it anyway because of the important points that it makes and the opportunities for discussion that it will raise. So, here is my lead-in for how I described this when I wrote about it online. And I said, well, it's been a while since I had such a blatant sex will change you conversation. This just happened on Twitter. I was responding to a popular Trash Takes account where they were sharing an ignorant dude who believed women can't be horny or experience sexual attraction until after a man chooses her and marries her, because women are created for men's pleasure, yada yada, the usual poisonous, misogynistic purity narratives, etc. I described my experience with this as an ace woman, and someone wandered in to say actually it was true for her that a man turned her straight. My tweet that this person responded to said this: I'm an ace woman who's also abstinent. The number of times I've been told that I just need my sexuality awakened by a guy doing sex to me is unreal. I keep saying, like, no man, lust isn't something you catch from someone and crave forever after. Dude, it's not vampirism. And a Twitter user, whose name I will not share, replied, this was actually true for me though. I thought I was ace. Had sex with a guy, became straight. Anyway, I looked at the person's account and thought other tweets looked a little bit trollish at times, but it was possible this was a genuine take. So, hoping I could help distinguish realizing you're straight in an affirming atmosphere from a man turned me straight through sex, I responded, and this exchange happened. I tweeted, for you, the option appeared and seemed appealing, and similar folks may change their minds on how to identify after having those experiences. And yet, people who had the opposite experience are also chiming in on this thread. Respecting people's agency is the way to go. And that user replied and said, I just think I didn't realize how incredible the penis actually was. It's such a powerful thing. It had the ability to change my ways. It's unclear whether this was intentionally incendiary, trollish commentary, or whether this is a real person who believes cis men can literally change women's sexuality with their penises. But let's talk about how harmful that idea is. There is, in fact, no shame in realizing your sexuality isn't what you thought it was, even if it includes a revelation that you're straight after you thought you were queer. It's also true that sometimes, even when someone is not sexually attracted to men, they might enjoy sex with men, and that's its own thing too, and includes many ace women who may or may not identify as hetero something, in combination with ace identity, while some others separate their interest in sex from their sexual orientation identity. And yet, what this nasty person suggested sure as hell isn't that. What she is saying here is that penises are so powerful that they can be imposed on someone who doesn't want them and change what a woman wants and needs. That penises have the power to overwrite a woman's opinions, needs, desires, and thoughts and replace them with a man's for the man's benefit. That women can think they know what they want, all they want, but once a penis appears and a man either talks her into trying it out or forces it on her, she can and will be changed. And furthermore, that it is her role to be passive in this situation, since men are the ones who have real desires, and women's don't matter, since they can be overwritten through sex. This idea isn't new, and obviously isn't limited to affecting ace women who do not want to have sex. People in certain circles have been using it on straight women in committed relationships since antiquity to convince them that their duty is to allow their needs and opinions to be subsumed by whatever the man wants, and in queer circles, as a virulent attitude to erase women's queerness. It's absolutely endemic. Men are always telling lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, and other queer women that they can and should be changed into straight women through sex. If I had to pick the top 3 ignorant comments that have been dumped on me as a female asexual activist and loud and proud ace woman, you can't know what you want until you try sex would definitely be in there. And part of the reason it's so dangerous, besides the fact that it exploits women's expected submissiveness in some circles, is that there are aspects of the perspective that sound really reasonable. You've probably heard, you won't even try sex, but, compared with trying a sport, trying an entertainment experience, trying a food especially. You indeed can't know if you like something until you try it. That makes sense. Sure. But being asexual or being any kind of queer sexuality isn't specifically about whether you like the sex experience with any specific other person or gender. It's the name for an attraction experience, the attraction experience of no. And while some people feel led to experiment and may choose different labels after they find they do develop some sexual attraction after being comfortable with someone or being intimate, it's super important that that is their choice, that it is not framed as something a stubborn person must have imposed on them for their own good. Agency is vital in what sexual and romantic interactions we experience. Framing sexuality as a malleable, potentially fluid aspect of a person's self is fine, as long as we recognize that the changes come from within and/or from accepting outside influences with consent. Framing sexuality as clay that someone else can and should mold, especially as a misogynistic expression of a man overriding a woman's desires with the power of his penis, is the very dangerous opposite of sexual agency. So, that is where this communication ends. I don't like to talk to people like that on Twitter or anywhere else. Generally, especially if they seem intentionally trollish, I'll just block them because it's not worth it to entertain those kinds of perspectives. But the more reasonable version of that, where people think it is normal to expect us to try sex before we say that we're asexual, I think there's a huge disconnect between their understanding what asexuality is. It's not the same thing as celibacy. and the choices that we make about whether we want to have sex are certainly relevant to whether we are sexually attracted to other people, but it's our choice. And we should never have to feel like we have to prove it to someone else or prove that our identity is valid by carrying out experiments that are associated with other people's standards for whether we're valid. So often I run into that attitude from people who think that they're very logical, very reasonable, and that they're going to find some kind of huge hole in my logic by saying, well, how can you possibly know if you haven't tried it? The claim that I'm making is not that there's no sex I could enjoy. What I'm saying is that I don't have sexual attraction to other people, and it's pretty normal to not want to have sex with people that you're not sexually attracted to. So, I mean, if you want to talk about facts and logic, but having these conversations is sometimes just an exercise in futility because they're not actually there to hear your perspective or understand you or learn anything about your experience. They're there to try to, again, overwrite yours with theirs. And they may, sometimes very convincingly, express their perspective as if it's the only logical and reasonable one, that sexuality is something that should be experimental. And like I said in the description, where I was explaining why it's so dangerous to talk like this, I think that we have to keep that distinction separate, that it's always about experimentation with our consent, with our own influence. One of the first things that I internalized after I decided to start describing myself as having a non-sexual identity, which is the term that I used before asexual became the term that became popular, was that if I was going to accept or entertain or explore any sexual options or any romantic options in the future, that some of that would have to come from me genuinely wanting it. That I didn't want to go back to a situation where the first two and only romantic relationships I had were imposed upon me by someone else's interest, and I felt pressure to just shrug and say, I guess I should try this. I didn't find anything in those relationships that I was looking for, and giving in and trying to be, quote, open-minded didn't help. It made it worse. So even though, of course, I do think people should be in touch with themselves enough to be open to new experiences, if that is genuinely what you're finding yourself being interested in, I think it's very important that we learn to trust ourselves and see ourselves as the major valid party in the decisions that we make. We shouldn't allow people to talk us into what they think is the most reasonable qualities, the most reasonable qualifications for becoming validated as an asexual person. I'm not asking for someone else's permission. I don't have to adhere to their standards. I don't need them to claim that they get to write the book on what constitutes an asexual identity. If somebody like that gets to write the test, we're always going to fail it, right? It's set up so that they can invalidate us. And we don't need them to believe us. So I recommend that anybody who goes as far as the example that I gave you is somebody that you block. You don't engage with someone like that as soon as you figure out that they're legit trying to tell you, oh, you may think that you know what you want, but somebody else knows better, and you just need to give in. You just need to accept that your role is to just roll over and let people do things to you that you don't want, because eventually you're gonna like it anyway. So, I mean, I think that's one of the grosser things that I've heard from somebody who doesn't believe in asexuality. And how much you want to bet that this is not a person who ever identified as asexual, that they're trying to say things like that just to engage with ace people so that they can sound like they're legit. It's like those people who pretend to be women online and they're actually men who are bitter and angry about women who won't date them, so they'll go online and cosplay as a woman and pretend that they're a woman that is regretful now that they had a bunch of sex with hot people when they were younger, and now that's drying up and they've hit the wall. If you've ever run into any of these red pill weirdos, this is a thing that they do. They go into advice columns or into comment threads on popular content creators, and they'll pretend that they're women who play right into those stereotypes, and that they're now regretting it, and that they felt that the nice guys in their lives were too boring, but now they're regretting their whole lives and they can't get married, or they make up weird comments about having a loose vagina or whatever, just these really explicit things that men like that think our lives are like. So you see a lot of that online where people will misrepresent themselves to try to make other people think that this is a thing. But there aren't a bunch of ace people out there saying, I thought I was ace until a penis came along. Like, that's just not a thing that people say. So, yeah. Anyway, I could ramble about this for a long time, and I feel like I kind of have. So I will go ahead and wrap this one up here. And I'll see y'all next time I make a video. Thanks for watching.